Hey guys, how's it going? So, I've done several videos raising awareness for red flag laws, talking about red flag laws, and the fact that they violate the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, and others. And I've warned about what can happen if these red flag laws are actually instated nationwide, and the slippery slope that it could lead to, and the fact that it's literally, like President Trump originally said, take the guns first, then due process. Now look, red flag laws are supported by both parties right now. Some of the leading Democrats are going for it, virtually all of them in fact, including some of the most powerful Republicans like Senator Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, and many others. And unfortunately, I have sad news today, guys. This is no longer a hypothetical that red flag laws might harm the innocent and that they might take the guns first from an innocent man and then give him due process later. Nope. Looks like it just happened. And this is probably just one of the many cases, but today we're going to talk about Sergeant Jonathan Carpenter of Osceola County, Florida. Now, I'm going to be referencing an article that Ammoland put out. I would also say, as an additional resource, go to Hank Strange's YouTube channel. He did a more in-depth article that's going to talk more about the details. But look, I want to raise awareness of what happened to Jonathan Carpenter, who I don't know personally, but all indications and everything is reported. This is a good man, a law-abiding man, served his country, a United States Marine. This guy is just a regular guy like the rest of us. This is a guy that's as good as it gets. He's not a bad guy. He's not in the gray area. This is just a regular old guy, and this is what happened to him. So, last Wednesday, Jonathan Carpenter of Osceola County, Florida, was sitting at home when a mail carrier knocked at his front door. The postal carrier had him sign for a certified letter from the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Now, John's kind of confused and shocked, right? Because he's not really expecting to be getting anything from the state. But he opens it up, and there's a letter attached. And it starts off by saying, on or about August 12th, 2019, in Osceola County, Florida, an injunction was entered, restraining you from acts of domestic violence or acts of repeat violations. Of course, Sergeant Carpenter is shocked, obviously. He says, when I opened the letter stating my CCW was suspended, I was shocked and confused. So, look, just like any of the rest of us would immediately think, Mr. Carpenter says, well, this has got to be a mistake. This is something I can clear up. I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't commit any acts of domestic violence. This is obviously, paperwork error. I'm assuming that's what he's thinking because, So he goes through here and he calls the Florida Department of Agriculture. Tells him he's never committed a domestic violence against anyone. The representative from there tells him he needs to get a form from the clerk of the court saying that there weren't any actions against him. And this is how it always works when you're dealing with the government. You can never just go to somebody's desk or call one person and get something taken care of. Oh no, it's never that easy. But it only takes one person to falsely accuse you of committing a crime or to accuse someone else of a crime with possibly the same name as you, mistaken identity. That only takes one call to take all of your rights and then due process later. But when you go to try to sort it out, it's never that simple, is it? So he heads to the clerk of the court to retrieve the required form. When he gets there, the clerk informs him there was an injunction against a Jonathan Edward Carpenter. And then he says, what do I have to do to prove that you have the wrong Jonathan Edward Carpenter? Obvious question to ask, right? Well, it's not that simple. The clerk says, well, you have to go downstairs and talk to the Osceola County Sheriff's Department. So he does. And when John gets down there, Sheriff's office supplies him with a copy of the injunction. And in the statement, the plaintiff stated she rented a room out to Jonathan Edward Carpenter and his girlfriend. She alleges that this Carpenter was a drug dealer who broke her furniture and sold her belongings without her permission. He had a gun and she feared for her life. She was not sure if the firearm was legal or not. Now, this is starting to become kind of crazy because here's the problem. The real Jonathan Carpenter, I'll call him Sergeant Carpenter, he's never met this woman in question. He's never lived at this address. And he's never had any restraining orders against him. He's never committed any acts of violence. And other than being white, same skin color, he doesn't have anything in common with the man who terrorized this woman. Now, the man in question is 5'8". Carpenter is 5'11". The alleged drug dealer is 110 pounds. Carpenter is over 200. The man in question has black hair. Sergeant Carpenter's completely bald. Last but not least, the man in question is covered in tattoos. Sergeant Carpenter has a few. So this is obviously apparent, right, that the police have the wrong Jonathan Edward Carpenter. Like, this is completely obvious. So I'm assuming Jonathan's still thinking, hey, you know, I can clear this up with the cops. No, nope. It's never that simple, is it, guys? Remember, take the guns first, due process later. This is why we're supposed to have due process first before we're considered to be guilty. Because once you're deemed guilty of something, it becomes a pain in the butt to prove your innocence, doesn't it now? So basically, the police confirm the sheriff's department told Carpenter he has to surrender his guns. He's got to turn over his CCW, you know, concealed carry permit. And Carpenter at this point has never had so much as a hearing. Yet he's already losing his rights. And look, guys, I wasn't trying to just be like, you know, dramatic when I say red flag is take the guns first, due process later. This is literally what happened to United States Marine Corps veteran Sergeant Carpenter. Again, regular old guy, just like you and you. Law-abiding person. Served his country. At home, minding his own business. And all of a sudden, all this crap starts. So they're like, no, it's serious. We need you to turn in your guns. And he finds out he's not going to be able to get them back until he goes to court so the woman can verify to the judge that they have the wrong Jonathan Carpenter. He would have to petition the court for the return of his firearms. And this is an added expense that Carpenter is going to have to cover himself. And here's the problem. Florida passed a law with the red flag. And right now we have an innocent man, so far as I can tell, as reported, that they've basically said, look, we think you might have the same name as somebody else. Like, look, come on, Jonathan Edward Carpenter. This is not much more uncommon than John Smith, right? Just because he has a name, they're able to find him, take his guns, take his CCW. Now, they're basically saying, look, you're guilty. Because you're not allowed to take, the government's not allowed to take possessions from somebody, lawfully owned property from somebody until they're already guilty, right? At least that's what the Bill of Rights says. It also says that you have the right to face your accuser. It says you have the right to have a trial and that you have the right to have a jury of your peers. It also says that there has to be a grand jury convened before these charges can be brought against you. None of this happened with Mr. Carpenter. There was an ex parte hearing, an injunction granted, ex parte meaning, look how this all happened. Mr. Carpenter didn't even know that there was another man that was wanted with the same name as him until they already sent him the letter saying, your CCW has been revoked. Turn in your lawfully owned property. Disarm yourself. This is how this works. This is the harsh realities of take the guns first, due process later. And we've all been warning about it, how this is a slippery slope and it's going to lead to this and that and it could be you. Well, guess what? This is real. This just happened. And it's a bunch of crap. And we need to get involved again, guys. We need to stay diligent here. In a couple weeks, Congress is going to reconvene back in session. Republicans and Democrats alike. They want to have the scenario like what happened to Sergeant Carpenter, where it could happen to millions of us. Now, in this case, I'm very optimistic that this lady had no ill will against the real Jonathan Carpenter, you know, United States Marine Carpenter, and she's probably going to look at him and say, oh, heavens, no, that wasn't him. I don't know where you guys got him from. And let's hope, I really hope for you, John, that that's what happens. But what if this was another scenario where it was an ex-wife, okay, that has a vendetta against somebody, and they're willing to lie? It could be even more complicated. Look, I'm not making light of what happened to Mr. Carpenter, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. Equal to what happened to him, if not worse, is not a hypothetical. This is going to happen to people, and it is happening right now. Now, look, guys, Mr. Carpenter right now is going to have to pay for his own court cost. He's probably going to hire legal representation, you know, an attorney, and this costs a lot of money. There's a GoFundMe right now that's been put out. And if you guys have a couple extra bucks to spare, I encourage you to help, donate to this. I think this is a good cause. I know there's a lot of things we donate to. Money's tight for most of us, but if you can even throw the guy $5, I'm going to put a link to the GoFundMe in the description. I'm going to put a link to this article in the description, and you guys can go read what's going on. There's a few more details that, I'm sure I didn't cover, but, Sergeant Carpenter's lovely wife has put out a little description there stating what happened to her husband and what's happening to her family. And yeah, he has to prove his innocence right now on his own dime. And if he doesn't, he's going to have a permanent blemish on his record, and he's presumably not going to get his guns back unless he goes and fights this and proves his innocence from a crime he didn't commit, that supposedly happened at a place that he's never been, by a man that doesn't even look like him. So, this is kind of a rude awakening, and, God bless you, Sergeant. I hope you guys can get through this. I hope your family stays strong, but it's going to be weeks until he can get his guns back, guys, best case scenario. So if you guys can help him out, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can call your legislators, let them know these red flags are not good, we want them gone. If you live in Florida, especially, call them up and say, hey, this law you guys passed is punishing an innocent man. You guys can go to the GoFundMe, throw a few bucks to help his family, pay for a lawyer or any type of court costs that are going to be needed, and spread this video and spread this story around. I don't need you guys to spread my video around. What I meant is just spread this around. What's happening here to Mr. Jonathan Carpenter, an innocent man, didn't do anything wrong, but he's already lost some of his core, fundamental, God-given rights that are enshrined in the Bill of Rights. Those are gone now. And he has to fight and pay money to try to get them back. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and have a good one.